Eh, Okay. So, Lisa, thank you so much for letting us record today. So, I'm excited to walk through your integrative Enneagram results with you. So, for our folks tuning in, Lisa scored as a type 2, 1-to-1. And we're going to talk a little bit more about what that means and what came up on the report. So, thank you, Lisa, for sharing this with
Thanks for
us.
having me.
And then I'm also curious, what resonated with you as you look through your report?
Well, the considerate helper is what it's. So it didn't surprise me at
Okay.
all because I am somebody who tends to see a need and try to fill it and help people. It's just something that just comes naturally for me. Um, and on the flip side of it, it talked about not really taking care of yourself, not, so you just really just give, and you ignore your own self. And that was me for many years. So that was the negative side of it. But I've learned now, and I'm now understanding that you can't give without filling up your own cup, so to speak. So that
Congratulations.
resonated, definitely resonated.
Yeah. Well, and what affirmation of work that you've already done?
With the life coaching.
Well, potentially. I mean, however you want to respond, but affirmation for things that you've already discovered. Because if you were new to the Enneagram or new type 2, it was like sometimes that can be a revelation like, oh, you mean all of this helping other people? I'm supposed to help myself more. And it's kind of that can be a hard thing to validate potentially for type 2s because they're so externally and others focused.
Yeah.
It can be difficult to, and also, I mean, 2s are like the superheroes of love and care. So it can be challenging, I think, sometimes that other people can't see or anticipate your needs in the same way. So for
Yeah.
you to have already done that work and that discovery, hopefully felt like an affirmation.
Yeah, it did for sure. It kind of just made sense. It was like, oh yeah, that is me. Almost everything that I've read is me to a T. There's some things where I'm like, oh, I don't know. But then I think, well, I need to really investigate that,
Mm,
the flip side of it. But it's certainly something that I have learned over the years. And I remember, people like my mom saying, you need to take care of yourself, Lisa. You need to take care of yourself. You need to make sure you're, getting a massage or, anything to take care of yourself. I'd be like, yeah, 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 yeah. And now I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah.
interesting. The yeah, 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 and brushing it off. Like what was underneath that?
I didn't see what she was seeing. I was just doing what normal, moms or caretaker type people do. People who, it was a natural thing for me. So I was like, I don't understand. I mean, logically, I get it. Of
Hmm.
course, I would say the same to anybody else.
Hmm.
But for me, it was like, I'm fine, I'm good. And you
Mm,
brush off the fact that actually, no, I was exhausted. I was doing too much and she could see it,
mm,
others could see it. And I think there's that part in there where it talks about you put yourself on the back burner to help other people. And so I think, especially when I was younger, I just never looked at it as I was putting myself on the back burner, as I got older, I've learned.
mhm.
Mm.
Okay. And how is that? What's changed for you now because you've learned that?
Part of it is my actual life. Being older, maybe being wiser, but also my children are grown. I think a lot of self-reflection, but I think because I'm older, my body will tell me when, I might get like canker sores when well, I did. I used to get loads of them when I was run down. Now I pay
Mhm.
attention to what my body is telling me. If I have headaches or I have a migraine coming on, I can tell. Then I look around at my environment and what am I doing? Am I not eating right? Am I not sleeping? Or am I putting all of my attention on other people and not focusing on myself? So I started to look at me as a whole person, emotionally, physically, and my environment. And I think when I started to do that, I started to go, oh my God,
Mhm.
right. And then I put healthy boundaries up. I put things in place to ensure that, I was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's hard because you feel selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, but you do it for everyone else
I know.
automatically.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was one of the things was it's like it is not selfish to take care of yourself. And I probably learned that several years ago, but over the course of I think the last year, it's really resonated with me that that is not a selfish thing as in you're not able to take care of anybody else because you're only thinking of yourself. And realizing that that's not true, you can still take care of yourself and take care of other people. So,
Mhm.
mm,
Good. Well,
yeah.
good. I'm glad. I'm glad it was affirming. And also, for you to have done this work and be validated in that work, because that is really a lot of the work for the two, is to figure out what are your needs and how can you meet your own needs just as you're so good at meeting everyone else's, as opposed to expecting or hoping that someone else will meet your needs in that way. Because that's a challenging thing. It comes naturally for you, so it's not an unreasonable expectation, golden rule, but that's not, other people aren't necessarily as good at reading and anticipating needs like you.
No, and I think that is something that myself and probably other twos will struggle with. It was like,
Hmm.
well, I don't understand how you can't see
Hmm.
this. It's so obvious. Like, I don't
Right?
get it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they talked about was in the report was how your feelings can get hurt if you feel ignored. And that is so true. If you like, I'm just giving, 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 I'm getting nothing
Hmm.
in return or not what I think should be in return. And then you're like, ugh, you're upset about that.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and then there's that line to eight where you're like, and we're gonna have words, or maybe you're dead to me.
That is actually true. Then I
Hmm.
jump very quickly over to the eight. And
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of love and power on that line.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And they are like, when I thought, oh yeah, this is absolutely me
Hmm.
with a bit of the four, but
Hmm.
going straight over to the eight. It's like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, that's me too. This is
Hmm.
stronger, the two, but I absolutely see the link going straight to the eight.
Hmm. Absolutely. Well, and I mean that's a natural progression, right? The lines. But what's interesting as well, so one of the things that comes up on your report is it shows me kind of how you score on the other types. So one of the things we'll do is talk about like the other types, how it comes up. I love that you brought up four because that's coming up as well. One thing you mentioned something that reminded me that sometimes one of the things twos have to work on is give to get. So there can be a way that instead of asking directly, like, hey, this is my need, or having there's often an expectation that others will see my need and anticipate it because that's something you're so good at. Or sometimes actually the giving and the act of giving is with an expectation of return. Is that something that feels like you had to work through or something that may kind of hook you at times?
Yeah, well, definitely the not understanding how someone can't anticipate a need because
Because you're so good
everybody
at it.
has needs and it seems just like I said earlier, obvious. Is something that I definitely have to work on, or have worked on, but I think it'll just be a continual thing, a process of learning and understanding. Um, it is 100% accurate
Mhm. Okay.
for
Okay.
sure.
Good. That's why we do this, right? We sniff around in different corners.
I want to say it's like 85%, but I'm like, oh, that
Yeah.
is me. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So one of the things when we look at the Enneagram that we can talk about a little bit today is that you have your wings. So there's the 1 and 3 next to the 2, and potentially how you pull on those and can pull on those. There are the lines. So as 2 connects to 8 and 4. So as we go and kind of stress or strain, this is part of what makes the Enneagram complicated, but also beautiful. There's a lot of choices on there. And then there's also what's called some people refer to it as tri-type, but we'll talk a little bit more about it with the areas of expression. So one thing that I noticed about your areas of expression, that I'm just going to bring up, it's not, and then we'll talk about how it relates to the Enneagram, is that you scored highest in feeling, and then action, and then your thinking is a lower center of expression. And that's not a bad thing. We all have kind of highs, mediums, and lows. But what resonates with a lot of people is the idea that it's, for you, it's you're ready and you fire, and maybe after the fact you aim. Does that land?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, when I was younger, for
Okay.
sure, that was an absolute for sure.
Hmm.
And it was just like that, you know? I think as I've gotten older, I've understood that that's not necessarily the best action to
Hmm.
take. Sometimes I can overthink things. So sometimes it
Mm,
almost feels like it's opposite, where
okay.
I'm thinking and thinking and thinking, but I get then super annoyed with that because I've got to do something. There's no point in thinking something till the nth degree and not having any action or
Hmm.
so with the feelings, I almost feel like that is more of like the intuition thing,
Hmm.
that sense that I get now as an adult, now that I'm older, it's almost like, yes, a feelings, but it's more like a gut feeling,
Hmm.
more like an intuition feeling versus just a reactionary feeling, and just like you said, just boom. And
Hmm.
just like if you're in an argument or whatever, you just go with your emotions. Um, so I think as I've gotten older, it's more that, yeah, that gut feeling, that
Hmm.
sense. Then I'll either act on that or I'll think it through. And then I'm like, I'm bored with the thinking thing. Let's just
Hmm.
do. Because why am I just sitting here doing nothing?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah, so that's a high action orientation, right? The feeling, the action, it doesn't mean that you don't think about it, but it's interesting because this assessment may capture the fact that your thinking style has changed over time, right? Because potentially you used to spend more time there, maybe take less action, maybe it didn't feel aligned. So that's something that moves.
mm,
How that's related to the Enneagram, though, is that this one of the things this assessment looks at is what's our primary feeling style for you. That's your primary type, so type 2.
yeah.
What's your primary action oriented style? And for you, on the action types of 8, 9, and 1, you scored highest in 8. So that gut in decisive action, bold action is a place that you're going to be more confident and comfortable in. Also, with 2s linked to 8, that's something that's relatively probably familiar to you.
Mhm.
Your thinking style came up as type 7. So your ability to see all of the enthusiastic possibilities. So what's interesting as you talk about thinking style is it sounds like it may even, you know, I don't want to put words in your mouth here. I wonder if it is even causing analysis paralysis, because with enthusiasm you can see all of the possibilities, and then it maybe make it more difficult for you to take action.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, it's like you just think, 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 and then you just either, yeah, if you're not gonna do anything, then it really does. I think if I'm in that loop, it is
Mhm.
hard to take action, which then is super annoying because that's not what I normally do. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So it's something to think about and potentially explore, because you do score the numbers that you score highest in on your assessment are your type 2, but then you also score pretty high on 7 and 8. I mean, there's a clear differentiation. They're not your primary type, but at the same time, we have an opportunity when something is underexpressed. And so your thinking style is the lowest center of expression. It's not the place that you're most comfortable in. If that's intentional, that's fine. But one
Mm,
of the things to think about is with a thinking style type 7, you're really good at seeing all the possibilities and what could be, and having a almost boundless enthusiasm. The challenge with kind of the 7 may be overcommitting, and that's something potentially as a 2 that you keep an eye on as well. But it's something as you're embarking on a new adventure and a new adventure in your business. that if and when it sounds like that your thinking time feels kind of agitating to you, like who has time for that? Like it's time to go.
Yeah.
But one thing to think about is that with a thinking style of type 7, you're likely able to see the possibilities. So it may be helpful for you to have some intention about whether it's a certain cadence, about when am I reflecting on what's possible, but it doesn't have to be something I have to take action on right now. Like these aren't people's needs I have to anticipate, but these are potentially you anticipating your needs and the needs of the business.
Yeah, really
Just
good.
food for thought.
Good.
Yeah. Seven's a strong card. We don't want to we don't want to toss that one out, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and then I also saw it related to kind of the centers of expression. All 2, 8, and 7 are all outwardly focused. They're focused on kind of bold action in the world on the 8,
Mhm.
possibilities and kind of enthusiastic possibilities for the 7. And then the 2s have that kind of love expression outward. So, one of the things to think about as well is with the Enneagram, and this may be that line to 4 for you, is when and if you are potentially more inwardly focused,
Mhm.
and when and how that can nurture you, and then also when and how sometimes that's more challenging for you, but that's potentially an area to be intentional about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, really good. Yeah. I can totally see that.
Yeah, when you think about your potential integration of like the artistic 4 who, very focused on the depth of the experience and the uniqueness, sometimes there can be more kind of melancholy there or feel of lack of understanding. On the more positive side, it can lead to you being more in touch with your own feelings and artistic expression. What comes up for you when you think about type 4?
Well, I mean, the artistic expression is something that I've tapped into in the last 3 years with writing, which it just does come out. I do, and there is definitely melancholy in there. There's definitely because it's the top this topic that I write about a lot is grief, and so there's a lot of there's a
Look at
lot.
that integration.
Yeah, it's like
Right.
there's a lot there,
Yeah.
but it flows out, and I mean, probably other people have been surprised too, but I more have been surprised at because people would say, are you creative? Are you artistic? Are you? I'm like, no, always no, because you can't play I can't play an instrument. I can't sing. I don't, that's how I decorate, that kind of stuff. No, no. Oh, writing and creating and bringing someone in to your world is like, it is really opened up. But with that, I almost feel like because of the topics usually I write about, I think, oh, I don't know if I want to go there. And then that kind of melancholy, I don't know if that answers it, but then that's that kind of, that part
Mhm,
really. Mm.
mhm. And when you say, "Ugh," is that release? Is it sadness? Is it both?
It's a it well, it depends, but I think I'm getting better at it now, but it's more the, oh God, like if I go down this road, this sadness, it's like, do I really want to do that right now and talk about grief? Like, is that going to take me down? And then I'm going to have a really just horrible day. So then I start thinking like, am I ready to do that? Even though it's flowing out of me, it's like, Lisa, you just have to go with that and just do it.
Mhm.
So that kind of is like, oh, I don't know if I want to. Can't I write about something happy? you know, Something
Mhm,
funny. Come on,
mhm.
So it is an interesting. That to me is a very interesting journey in the 4 realm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And it sounds like you're really in it because I think that that is one of that can be challenge and potentially a path to growth for 4. They're so good in the depths, but what about the depth of the joy or the depth of the experience? Like that's usually the realm of the 7s, right? But that's another thing to think about. Potentially that can be creating an opportunity and also strain for you. You do score high in 4. You also score high in 7. So in some ways, you have the depth, sometimes what can be associated with the comfort in the darker depths, and then potentially focused more on the abundance of the possibility. So it sounds like you feel the call of both of those.
Yeah.
And maybe even as a 2, sometimes you're also anticipating the needs of others around you. What do others need me to be? How do
Yeah.
others need me to show up? Which
Yeah.
may influence what happens when you're alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the 2 pops in with will this help other people when they read it? Or
Mhm.
will some of the information that I'm putting out, or some of the
Mm.
quote unquote advice, not advice, but just my experience, is that going to help other people? And I know that it has, because I get messages. So then it's like, oh, so that part also
Feeds
taps
you.
too. It does. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, look, it's actually helping. It's not just me babbling on a sheet of paper, or, on the computer.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good.
Mm.
Good. What happens in your line to 8 when you step into that power, maybe a little bit more comfortable with your instincts and also your anger?
Yeah, well, I think I can go quite quickly there.
Mhm.
So now, do you mean just like, you don't mean just like anger, right?
Well, I mean, an eight is in, so each triad has a primary kind of expression, and for the two, 3, and 4 are in shame. So one thing we haven't talked about, but and we don't have to talk about, but the kind of go-to emotion, potentially for a 2 is shame. I'm not good enough. I haven't served enough. I don't deserve to take care of my own needs. That I don't know if that's not, that last one sounded a little martyry, so I don't know if that's the expression.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go over to that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 are more prone to kind of anxiety process, whether it's avoiding anxiety or falling into anxiety. Whereas 8, 9, and 1 are in the body triad, and the kind of natural emotion there is potentially anger. So
Yeah.
eights are more likely to express their anger. Nines often repress and occasionally will burst out, right? And ones often, you don't necessarily see it, and then it's more of a like I'm gonna burn the building down
Yeah.
very quietly,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
cold, quiet rage,
Okay.
potentially, right? Like it's so
Okay.
we all each type in its triad has a different, whether it's what they call external, internal, or contradicted. So because your style is more external, you're potentially more likely to express anger or frustration out. It may not even feel like anger or frustration to you, but to know that you have a line to 8, it does mean you are more likely to be bold and direct, less worried about what people think, potentially perceived as confrontational, even if you are just confronting the issues that need to be confronted.
No, in that, when I was reading that, I was like, that is 100% me. So people will not, especially in this country, in the UK, that nobody says anything. They just, tap it all down until they're drunk, and then it just comes out.
Like, unless you're at the pub.
And they're at the pub, and
Yeah.
that's it. And all this stuff comes out. I'm like, what? Or like, I've been angry with you for 4 years about something. And I'm not like that. If there's a problem, I'm going straight to the issue. Um, I absolutely know, especially when I was younger, very boom, short fuse, like my dad. You knew if I was angry. It didn't take much to just boom. As I got older, I learned that that might not be the most appropriate reaction to things, but it's still there, absolutely 100%. So it might take a little bit to get me there, but that absolutely is me. I am more bold. I don't like confrontation, but I know the importance of it. That's what I feel, the importance of it. So I'm going to just tell you, and let's work this out. Um, and it definitely is me. I'm not so so we have 2 daughters, and I just literally had this conversation the other night. Was the girls were both going, they're grown. The girls are both going like, who were you more afraid of when you when we were young? And my youngest daughter was like, oh, dad, definitely dad. And my oldest was like, what? Definitely mom, because she just give you that look, you're in trouble. And then bam, he would take a while to get, and not me, I'm bam, like right in it. So that is definitely me.
Mhm.
At
Okay.
8.
And how does it kind of, we talked about artistry with the 4 and artistic expression. How do you see either your focus on helping people or potentially that comfort in areas of leadership? How does that affect your comfort in roles of either leadership or authority?
You mean me being in leadership or
Mhm.
authority?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly comfortable in that. I mean, I was a director of a program when I was 26. I think the only problem I had was, oh my God, I'm 26. Is anybody going to listen to me? Why would anyone listen to me? I'm so young, that kind of question. And I don't, that might just be a natural,
Mhm.
normal thing, but I've always been quite comfortable in those roles. But what's interesting is if it becomes life sucking and too much stress, it's not worth it to me. I don't know if that then drops into the 2 or what, but it just becomes like, ugh, it's not worth the money. It's not worth the stress. It's not worth my time. So I would rather take a secondary role, like a assistant type of role. So I don't
Mhm.
have the stress of that. But if you were to ask me to jump into something public speaking or something where I'm managing people or whatever, I enjoy managing people and taking care of people. Maybe that's the taking care of people part. Um, so I'm not bothered by it.
Mhm.
Um, so
Well, and also, it's not surprising, but I hear your care. Your 2 is coming out, and that's the thing. Even when we move to kind of pull on other types or balance out our types, there's, as you lead to power, caring about people is still there, right?
uh,
As you lead into artistic expression, even if it's something that feels deep and dark, hey, this is something I can share with others.
mm, it's true.
So, one of the things to think about, and we don't have to explore this here, but also in the coming back to the 2 and the 2s being, having sometimes challenge with their own needs, is also thinking about what's good for you and what you need, even if it's not beneficial to other people.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because that's a potentially harder ask. And what I think is beautiful is you've been able to see how you can move and serve and support others in the movement. But then that also, we just have to be careful that it's not like, well, I can only grieve if it serves,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
only lead if it serves.
Mhm.
Where you can grieve and you can lead and you can, be all the complexity of you, even
Mm.
if it doesn't help someone else.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a really good point. Um, yeah, it is a very good point because there always is that underlying. I mean, I kind of always think about the finding meaning. There's always a meaning behind it. Well, that meaning is, helping me, yes, but also helping other people. And
Mhm.
that is definite. So when you say, think of something that you can do that, even if it doesn't benefit other people, I'm like, oh, I don't really know what that is,
Mhm.
what that looks
Yeah.
like
And
necessarily.
and that's okay. It's potentially just being open to the possibility that if there's something that you want or need, even if you can't see the direct benefit, sometimes that may be the path to growth. Because
Mm.
it's not like you're a maniacal dictator, right? Like
Yeah.
you're too,
Yeah.
So, you're, even in your movement to these places that may be less comfortable to you, you're still always thinking about other people and other people's needs,
Mm.
and you're so good at holding the space for someone else, and being able to point back to them, well, what do you need and how do I take care of you? So just even thinking about kind of how you maybe mirror that back, and maybe create the intentional space for that for yourself, where it doesn't have to be something that's externally expressed either for or to someone else.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's really good because the only thing I can actually think about is, going to the gym or doing some sort of exercise because
Mhm.
of for me, for my health, for me.
Yeah,
But really, that's literally as I'm thinking, I'm like, I'm not sure. So I'll
that's
think
okay.
through that.
Yeah. Well, care for your body is an excellent answer to that. So
Yeah.
it's just a matter of, and actually what's, I think what's interesting as we get into the wings, your wings were pretty even. So the one wing and the three wing, one of the things to think about is, I don't know how much you're called to feel like, okay, I need to be the best or I need to achieve, or how, if and when and how much you're called to kind of the more kind of perfectionist tendencies. I can make this better, I can improve this. But that's something to think about as well, kind of as we talk about, hey, what's something for you that's only for you? It doesn't have to be something that you have to get right, and it doesn't have to be something that you might get wrong. And that may not be a trigger for you, but as I was expressing that, I was thinking, your wings came up, and we want to take care of those too.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily characterize myself as a perfectionist,
Mhm.
but if I do something once or twice and it's just not coming naturally for me, I will just go, oh, that's not for me. Instead of trying to, so I don't know if that's because I didn't master it right away because I'm not really into that, but I don't know. Um, so yeah, I don't know. The idea of doing something without any intention in the sense that it might help somebody else is just like, except for exercise, I literally, and even then I think, because I want to be around for my kids.
Mhm.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That would be my answer. Like, I want to do it for me, but I also
Yeah.
want to be around for them,
Yeah. And that's, we're not trying to take your core motivation away,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
It's just examining it. And it
yeah,
doesn't even have to be something that you proactively do or find. But if and when presented with an opportunity and it's something that maybe you want, but you feel like you're not going to move towards it because it would only be for you and you couldn't see the benefit to someone else, then I invite you to consider that opportunity.
yeah. No, it's really good. Yeah, very good. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not about changing our type, it's not about changing our wiring. It's about being open to taking a different path or potentially creating a different way.
yeah. No, it's really good.
Yeah. So, one of the things, anything else you want to say about the wings or questions you have about the wings?
Not really. I mean, I think you really nailed it. So
Okay.
that's great.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, the pages on the report that talk about 8 and 4 and 1 and 3, I think those have some really good strategies, right? Things you can try, things you can potentially explore. We often, yours are pretty evenly spread. A lot of times we'll find that maybe you lean into one wing more than another, or you may lean into one line more than another.
Yeah,
So one of the things to think about is just the integrative Enneagram. The idea is that the more that we integrate, all types have strengths and areas of development. So the
yeah,
more that we integrate, we're able to kind of balance it out and look at it from different perspectives.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and that's interesting because that is the word that just keeps coming to my head is balance. Balance, balance, balance.
Mhm.
So, that is something I've been for probably 2 months. It just keeps coming into my head. Like, that is so important. So the fact that you even just said that is like just really confirmation.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Uh,
So one of the things, I don't know how much you know about the Enneagram instincts. Are you familiar with the instincts, or was this your first introduction?
this is my first introduction to
Mhm.
it. Um, or possibly I did a thing on an Enneagram many, many years ago and I don't remember it. So,
No, that's okay.
I mean, I
Yeah.
remember I was a 2 with an 8. I mean, I remember that. But I definitely resonate. But you go and I'll follow. You
Okay.
speak
Okay.
and I'll follow.
Yeah, so of the instincts, you scored highest in the 1-to-1, which is there's a level of kind of intensity and depth of experience. So in your relationships, in your experiences, you're looking likely for, you're not necessarily going to be on the surface. You're not a surface person.
No,
Right? It's
yep,
not about connecting with everyone. It's potentially getting kind of lost. You could potentially get lost in a couple conversations or certain topics or activities. It seems like this is resonating for you.
totally. 100%.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So that was kind of your leading. So the depth and the richness of the experience and of the relationship is likely to be a driver. What's interesting about the Enneagram instinct is there's 3 different instincts and then there's 9 different types. So you potentially will align with other people of your same instinct. So even when you go into 8, what you talked about, like I'm in it, like I'm there, some of that is the 8 with the one-to-one instinct. There's a different level of intensity. Same with the 7. So for you, kind of the depth and the richness of the relationship and the experience, no matter where you are in the process, like that's going to be really strong for you.
Yeah.
Other people, your second instinct is more social. So other people, such as myself, it doesn't mean social as in extroverted. It means social as in reading a room. So one of the things is you naturally have an ability to read, like where's the power, who's uncomfortable, who's feeling comfortable. However, because your priority is to the one-on-one, you could potentially be in a depth conversation or enriched in something, and you may or may not be scanning. But when you do scan, you have a strong knowledge of what's the dynamics in the room. Part of the reason I bring that up is because that's not necessarily something that other people can do or see.
Mm.
So the instinct that you're lowest in is self-preservation. So, the making sure that your own needs are met. Not a huge shock, right? As a 2,
Yeah.
but there are 2s with the self-preservation instinct. So, there's different types show up different ways. Self-preservation folks are very good at, like, they have the first aid kits, they've checked the exits, like they know kind of how their needs will be met, not in a selfish way. It doesn't mean selfish, but sometimes that's actually something potentially for you as a 2 to explore and pay attention to, even your clients and the people that you work with, who are the people who always, I feel like you would have snacks in your bag because of your kids, but self-pres will have snacks in the bag because they're like, if my blood sugar drops, then I could be in trouble. Right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So it's different reasons, but it's funny, my self-preservation instinct is like teeny tiny, but what happens, my social instinct is so high. I connect with people and then they share their stuff. So I
Yeah.
don't need extension cords or snacks or first aid kits because, I make friends, right? So
Uh-huh.
it's
Okay.
not about, none of this about, oh, this is the right one or this is the wrong one. None of that is the case with the Enneagram. It's just to be aware of, if you're in an environment where you're not feeling like the depth or the richness of the experience that you're looking for, it may be because people are just coming from it from a different angle.
Right. Yeah.
So it's something to think about. And then certain books, I don't know if we've talked about this, but the 9 Types of Leadership by Beatrice Chestnut.
We did when we,
Okay.
yeah, we
So
did.
so the nice thing is she'll have everything for your leadership style as type 2, but she also does more about, you'll see the different instincts. And so it's something to potentially even to explore, because we have our predominant instinct. You're also pretty high in social. Sometimes it's nice to look at what's a different shade of this. What's a different way that this could come out?
Yeah.
And
Great.
then
Yeah.
when as you look through that book, 2 is your predominant type. If you're looking more at either your wings or your lines, or even like 4 or 7, 1 or 3, when you look at those, you're most likely to express that one-to-one instinct because that's your predominant instinct.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that can change over time. But at the same time, our instincts, pending a major life experience, our instincts tend to remain the same. So what's interesting is that sometimes you'll align with someone based on type. Other times, sometimes we align with people based on instinct.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That
it's
makes sense.
it's an interesting layering. It's an interesting layering in. Um, the other thing, one of the things to think about is choices. So the kind of one of the things that they talk about is like whether when you're trying to get something that you want, whether you're assertive, compliant, or withdrawn. You actually scored slightly higher in assertive. So that line to 8, you're comfortable in assertive. Barely. It's like 1 point different than compliant. So 2s are more likely to be compliant, but you're very comfortable in the assertive space. So I would say that's good. You have two things that you reach for. So you can be assertive or compliant. You're less likely to be withdrawn. So withdraw is a strategy. It's just a different type of strategy. It's just something to consider because that's a lot of what we're looking at with the Enneagram. What's my default strategy and style? How do I leverage those? How do my strengths and overuse potentially create blind spots? And then what other options are there? Not
Mm,
because you'll reach for them as often, but to know that, for example, like the nines and I believe also the fours withdrawal, they take that space and time
mm,
away for themselves. That's not your natural mode, but it
right.
is another choice. And sometimes what happens is the strategy we don't choose, we choose reactively, you
Mm,
know,
yeah. Yeah.
drive so hard you burn out and then stop, right? Work so hard serving others, you get sick, and
Yeah.
then you have to withdraw because you're sick and you don't want to share your germs. So sometimes the coping mechanism that we don't choose will come out as a counterbalance. So one of the things to consider is, when does withdrawing benefit you?
Right.
And when does it fill your cup?
Mhm.
And maybe withdrawals not necessarily a strategy you're going to be as comfortable with because it may fill only your cup and no one else's.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something to consider,
Yeah.
you know,
Definitely.
a trip by yourself,
Hmm.
a book that you don't tell anyone you're reading, which I have trouble imagining you not sharing,
Yeah.
like, what,
Oh,
like,
yeah. You've
I
got
love
to get this book.
this book and yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so then, another thing we look at is your styles in conflict. And your conflict style is positive outlook. You're able to see the benefit. You're able to see that silver lining. You scored second in reactive. So again, your 2 to 8 line is strong. There's a lot of love and power on that line. So if something's wrong, you're able to kind of speak up and lean in and say. One other strategy there is competency, just making the most of it, not seeing the benefit of it necessarily, but just kind of competently working way through it. So we don't have to go into a lot of details there, but different types will pull on different strategies. The type 2 pulls on compliant and positive outlook. And then you kind of with your strong kind of 8 line and also like scoring high as well on 7, you're a little bit more comfortable on the assertive side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mm,
there's a lot here. There's a lot more here.
yeah.
But as we kind of move to close, I'm curious what you're taking away.
Well, I think the withdrawal is a big one. Like, just, and that probably just is something that I have started to do, but need to do and do it for me. Um, but also the doing something that's good for me without any having it be for anyone else, like just for me. You asked me that question, I should have some sort of answer. And the fact that I can't actually think about that except for going to the gym, that to me is like, I need to think through this. So I'm going to take it away and it's going to fester in there until I figure something out. But those are big. That is definitely a big one for me, actually.
Good.
Yeah.
And what I'd invite you to consider, it doesn't have to be a should. It doesn't have to fester. It can just be an opportunity to
Right.
keep your eyes open for, right?
Yeah.
Because your ability to kind of see the options and the potential opportunities, especially with your thinking style as a 7, having some fun with what could be possible without it necessarily having to be something that you have to do or have to commit to. I told Diana I was going to do this, so I have to do this, right?
Right.
Like just
Yeah.
pay attention to that kind of the
Right.
narrative of the motivation.
Yeah.
And it's just something to consider.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah.
really good. That's
Yeah.
good. That's a good, that's a good thing to say.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
Thanks for
appreciate it.
having me. No problem. Thank you.